Use your imagination.
Karis Academy is one of many charter schools in St. Louis, but those here would tell you they are unique compared to all the others. Locally, it's true because they are running a program called Summit Learning. It's a theory that originated on the West Coast about 20 years ago with this woman.
And then I show him and he does the worksheet and then we're done. I was like, okay, but does he learn that way? Well, no.
Her name is Diane Tavenner, and she spoke recently to a packed house at St. Louis's Innovation Hall in the Cortex District. What is different about Summit Learning? Well, it seeks to turn traditional education on its ear with what Tavenner would tell you are basic common sense principles.
The first is a project-based curriculum that's hands-on and real world, where kids are solving interesting problems as they are learning. And this is really the way we should be teaching kids in the modern world, given the skills that are required by our economy today and the future that they're going to enter. The second is self-direction. Kids need to be able to own and drive their own learning. The third is collaboration. We're living in a world where people don't do work by themselves anymore. They don't solve problems by themselves anymore. It really requires working together, not only in the workplace, but at home. And then finally, reflection. Learning occurs when you actually think about your learning and you reflect on what you've learned, and then you think about what comes next.
The work they do is project-based and school is year-round. Those are just some of the concepts aimed at teaching kids the sort of independence they will need in the so-called real world.
Our job is to create opportunities on a day-to-day basis where our kids are really put in charge of their own lives, given the opportunity to take control.
You can speak to him.
Summit Learning fully runs schools and school districts in Northern California and Washington State, and Tavenner says they have had success there that St. Louis City schools in particular can take note of. She says college graduation rates for Summit graduates are 4 times the national average, and they jump to 8 times the national average among students of color. Many of those kids come from poor families.
We have been able to succeed with the kids who have disadvantages. And one thing about kids is they don't want to fail. I've never met a kid who wants to fail. And so if we can give them real opportunities to succeed, most of our kids can overcome those disadvantages and actually succeed.
Tavenner also has a book out which, among other things, preaches taking the ideas from her schools home. And she says one of the first things we need to scrap is tailoring our kids' lives around getting into what we perceive is the perfect college.
Instead, what we should be focusing on is helping our kids figure out, who are you? What do you care about? What are you interested in? Ultimately developing passions that they can pursue at a level of depth that is what the colleges are looking for, not because we've engineered it, because we think that's what they're looking for, but because it's true and authentic to our kids.
As for how to improve public schools in big cities like St. Louis, Tavenner says it begins with parents holding administrations and administrators accountable.
We have a lot of power when we actually raise our voice and we're knowledgeable and we say, you know, we expect a curriculum that is grounded in what our kids actually need for the future, that is not based on a 100-year-old model that really doesn't serve us well anymore. And I think sometimes we're our own worst enemy in that regard, because as parents, it's easier to go to schools that we know and understand and are familiar to us. It's harder to be a parent in a school that looks different than what we're used to.
She says that different look is something we all need to embrace. School as we know it is changing. George Sells, MetroSTL.com.